Thanks for staying with us here on France 24 and for staying with us for this edition of The World This Week in association with The Daily Beast. Joining me to discuss what's been dominating the global headlines this week is Christopher Dickey, foreign editor at The Daily Beast, and Emre Demir, the editor of Zaman France. Thank you to both of you for being with us this evening to discuss the main events this week. And what a week it has been, especially on the US presidential campaign trail, with Donald Trump dominating the headlines for all the wrong reasons, one could argue. This was the week that saw prominent Republicans endorse Hillary Clinton, Trump's poll numbers take a nosedive, and all this even before a gaffe in which the businessman appeared to suggest assassinating his Democratic rival, before going on to claim that President Barack Obama was the founder of the Islamic State group. Well, Trump has tried to walk this back today, claiming he was merely being sarcastic. But less than 90 days until the election, do the Democrats have it all sewn up? Or is there no point even trying to make predictions in this race that has thrown the rulebook out of the window? Christopher Dickey, what do you make of this?
Well, I think, first of all, I think Trump knows exactly what he's doing. I think that he is throwing these ideas out there. Even ideas like not exactly assassinating Hillary Clinton, but those Second Amendment people, those gun rights people, they know what to do if their rights are being taken away. He knows exactly how they're going to respond to that. I think the most interesting story in many ways that came out over the last week was one about Joe Scarborough, who has a famous morning show called Morning Joe in the United States, who was really kind of a Trump supporter. And he was a former Republican congressman and conservative, but not ultra right-wing. And he was sort of playing along with Trump. And just in the last few weeks, he's come out very strongly against Trump and says, we just can't have this guy. But when he said that, he said, I know this guy. I've known this guy for 12 years. And he says these things completely cynically. It's not part of his ideology. It's not what he believes. He's not a racist. I've never heard him say anything privately that's racist. No, he says it publicly. And that's what's really so scary about Trump, is that he is playing this cynical game, playing to the absolute worst instincts in the American public and in the public, the voters, among the voters who support him.
Well, Emre Demir, who do you think stands to benefit from this wild rhetoric that's coming out? Because clearly the establishment aren't happy, but this voter's lapping it up. So where do we go from here?
Well, look, I see the reasons behind the rise of Trump. He embodies, a right-wing populist movement. We see it is a global trend. We see everywhere the leaders of this kind. We saw him. He accused Obama and Hillary Clinton as being the founder of ISIS. This kind of conspiracy theories. You can read this on, Russian propaganda sites or some crazy people's,
especially Russian propaganda,
crazy people's blogs. And we do have leaders like this around the world. To be precise, for example, we in Turkey have a president who sees global conspiracies behind pretty much everything, every problem. And but it's okay, the rest of the world can cope with it, can handle the situation, and it can go on. But a leader like Trump, if he becomes the president of the United States, or he becomes the leader of the Western world, it's a catastrophe. It's a terrifying moment for the rest of the world. I see it is worrying for American people, but it is terrifying for the rest of the world. He's pretty much a Marvel's villain character. He is someone who maybe he can. If a Russian cartoonist decides to draw an American villain, he can draw someone like Donald Trump. So we don't see maybe if you look from the perspective of the rest of the world, especially the Western allies, it's getting worse and worse. A president who accuses another U.S. president as the founder of ISIS.
And then says he was just joking. Then says he was just
or indeed
being
a president who invited Russia to spy on Hillary Clinton's.
Well, the whole relationship between Trump and Putin and Trump and Russia is just truly bizarre. I mean, you have Russia, clearly the aggressor in Ukraine, clearly making these moves over the last couple of years, and Trump won't say anything about it. Not only will Trump not say anything about it, but when it came to the Republican platform, the statement of principles of the Republican platform, Trump's people had the pro-Ukraine, anti-Russian plank taken out of that platform. You know, it's like, did Putin just buy and pay for this guy? I mean, did Putin create this guy? Is he a figment of the KGB's imagination? You know, I don't think he is, but I'm just saying, you know, it's a huge possibility, as he would say.
Indeed. Well, let's look at how to respond to this. I mean, if you look at it on paper, the Democrats have a fairly easy job of it. All they have to do is just sit back and watch him implode. But if you think back to, for example, the Brexit vote, when all world leaders were saying this would be a disaster, all the evidence laid out would suggest it's a no-brainer. And yet you have this populist anger which pushed that vote through.
You're right. The people with no brains voted for it.
Well, do you think there's a similar risk in the
absolutely.
US?
Oh, Hala, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. I think that the risk, Emre and I were talking about this before the show, the risk of overconfidence on the part of the Democrats, the risk that the people who think that Trump is basically the incarnation of Satan, that they will just assume that he couldn't possibly get elected. That risk is enormous. And when they do that, he may well get elected. There's a lot that can happen between now and the elections.
So how do the Democrats combat this, Emery?
Well, first of all, don't write him off. Trump can win these elections. It is a high probability. I mean, since the beginning, we've seen this as an electoral phenomenon. We've seen this as a big trolling campaign. I mean, he was faking it.
He was written off again and again and again.
We never taken it for serious, but it is serious. And these misstatements does look like misstatements, but I think he knows what he's doing, and he always won on this way. I mean, we have to look at the other populist leaders around the world. They always use the same strategy, and it works, and it can work on the United States too. The problem with the Democrats is that Hillary Clinton looks like the embodiment of the establishment. She is the perfect candidate for Trump also. So we don't have a clear winner here.
Yeah, she's a terrible speaker, actually, in a big public forum. She's really a terrible speaker. American listeners will remember John Dean, who was a Democratic candidate early in the primaries a few years ago. And there was one incident where he was giving a speech and he just started to scream. It was called the John Dean scream. It ended his career. Hillary Clinton is like listening to that scream over and over and over again. It's just she has an unsympathetic presence in front of a mass audience. Whereas Trump, he's just one of the guys. He's just, like we're going to have a beer and we're going to talk and I'm going to say ridiculous things, but we're all sort of on the same wavelength when he's in front of his audience. So she's not a very good candidate. He is a loose cannon, very difficult to deal with. We don't know how the debates will turn out. But let's also be real straightforward about this. Terrorism has been very, very good to Donald Trump.
Which is surprising, given that the CIA head actually spoke out in
but that's sense. But also the CIA, the FBI, all of them, they tell you should listen to us. And people say, do we feel safe listening to them? No, they don't. So what Donald Trump does is after November 13th here in France, after the San Bernardino attacks, he starts saying absolutely insane things like we'll ban all Muslims from coming to the United States until we figure out what's going on. That sounds sensible to people who are scared and stupid.
So less than 3 months to go, we could be looking at a situation where Trump will win, or win bigly, as he might put it. But meanwhile, there are many others who are winning bigly. Down in Rio, as the first week of the Olympic Games comes to a close, records have been smashed. A veritable gold rush for Michael Phelps, who, if he was a country, may rank higher than countries like France in the medal tables. And yet a quick glance at the papers shows the sporting achievements barely making the front pages. Instead, we're talking about anything but sport. From the half-completed venues and green diving pools to athletes accusing each other of doping, the sports commentators are making derogatory comments about female athletes. So what's up with the unsportsmanlike side events stealing the show? Emery Demir, your thoughts?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't enjoy anymore the Olympics. You know, the Olympics has become a harsh reminder of the performance drugs problem, a global problem right now. And the problem is that we don't know exactly how many athletes dope, and we don't know who will be the real winners. You see the swimmers, the athletes running, and you're not even sure that the gold medalist is the right one. And I watched John Oliver's show. He says at the end of his show that it's think of doping problem like Vladimir Putin. It's far from just a Russian problem. It affects the entire world. So I mean, we focalize a lot about Russian athletes or Chinese athletes, but it is a global problem, and sponsors, especially sponsors, has to do something about it. It becomes another Tour de France. We don't watch it anymore because we don't trust anymore. The situation, and you'll never know who is the real athlete there.
Yeah,
am I harsh?
Emery's right.
Harsh.
No, I don't think that's harsh. I think Emery's right about that. But I think also it has to do with the commentary. Mm-hmm. I was talking to somebody today who's a big sports fan, and he says there's a station here, one of the cable stations here in France, that allows you to watch just the feeds of the events with no commentary. If you're watching an equestrian event, you hear the horses galloping, and you hear them snorting, and you hear the people sighing and cheering and booing, a lot of booing in Rio. But you just watch the sports with no commentary. And the sports, although I'm not a big fan of these sports, the truth is when they're beautiful, they are really extraordinary. When you see those athletes, the gymnasts, men or women, they seem to be flying.
Absolutely.
When you see the swimmers, it's extraordinary. When you see Michael Phelps, it's not just that he has the number of medals. I mean, that's so journalistic. Oh, let's look at the number. Look at him in the water.
Look at the performance.
Look at him in the water. It's just an amazing thing to behold. And I think if you just look at the aesthetics of it, and you put aside how they got there and everything else, and just look at the beauty of it, I think that is something to appreciate.
Well, that feed that you mentioned might come in handy, one might say, after some of the scandals that have come out with commentary. We had BBC commentators describing a female judo final as a cat fight. We've had derogatory comments made about female athletes throughout. I mean, at one point I had to check my watch, and we're still in 2016. Right. I mean, are we just noticing this more now because we're in a more media-savvy age? Or is there a downturn, would you say?
I mean, and sports and nationalistic stereotypes is nothing new. This is nothing new. I mean, when you look at international competitions, you hear a lot about if you are talking about Turkish people, you hear a lot of stereotypes, racist stereotypes about Turks or other nationalities. So I don't think that this is something new,
Well, I think the sexism is something that we're more aware of than we were before, but I think it's also just because commentators run out of things to say. They run out of things to say, and
they can stop talking.
And they just keep talking.
Start preparing some notes. Yeah. There have been some highlights, though. Any highlights of yours from the Olympic Games this week, Christopher?
Oh, well, I think, look, the Americans are doing very well. I mean, I think our gymnasts, particularly our women's gymnasts, it was extraordinary. Yes. Extraordinary performance. Phelps was amazing. And, that's great. I mean, the French, they've got a few medals eventually.
And they got 2 today. We should congratulate them for that.
And, sometimes the first medals that are won are in sports that you like, oh, is that a sport? Is that really happening? I think the first American gold medal was in shooting. Yeah.
And just quickly, Emery,
and a sad moment maybe today, I think it was today, an Egyptian judo fighter refused to shake hands with his Israeli counterpart. And I mean, it's Olympics.
On the other hand, you have the North and South Koreans taking selfies together.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So for every horror story, there's certainly some joy to be found in those games. That's all we have time for. I'd like to thank both of you gentlemen for joining us here on The World This Week. Christopher Dickey from the Daily Beast and Imre Demure from Zara France. Thanks to you two for joining us for this edition of The World This Week. I'm Hal Mohideen in Paris. Stay tuned to France 24. Thank you very much.
We never know when they're going to turn off the camera. We were.